Chapter 2. The Keri. When the Tyor had dispersed, Merlara retired to her chamber. She sank down on the bed and breathed a sigh of relief. How she wished for her mother's presence. Her mother had always seemed so confident, so sure of herself. The confidence she had displayed in the council room was in truth non-existent. She couldn't help wondering where she would be without Tyriel's counsel. If it wasn't for her family's devotion to the dragons, she wouldn't be so anxious of how her actions or potential failure might be interpreted. 2,000 years before, Tyor and Callagan were hostile, until the war with the Seldrian forced them to unite. Before long, both kingdoms realized they and eventually the Suro-Undaying kingdoms would be destroyed, unless they formed an alliance with the dragons. The dragons were powerful creatures, known for the fact that they only killed humans when threatened, and when they did, it was forbidden among their kind to consume them. Any dragon who violated this rule was severely punished, as the dragons considered it a crime to eat anything other than dumb animals. Humans, and the races of animals that could talk, were forbidden for consumption. Each of the dragons had a special gift or gifts, which were almost endless in variety. Some could turn their opponents to stone with a single word. Others could convert the fire within them to snow or mist, or toxic fumes that would melt or suffocate their victims. Many who were foolish enough to challenge them, claimed the dragons spared their lives when killing was unnecessary, and forbade any of their kind to eat the ones they had killed. But many disagreed, as some were suspected of inventing such tales to get attention. They were furious when Tyor and Callagan aligned with the dragons, though it was necessary for their survival. The tide began to turn then, as the Seldrian were unprepared. In a last effort to destroy both countries, the Seldrian attacked Imithia, hoping to kill its inhabitants and thus give them an advantage over Callagan. That battle became known in the dragon's language as Telemivi, meaning conquer or die. Tyor, Callagan, and the dragons were victorious, but Queen Familia of Tyor was fatally wounded. The Seldrian were known for their deadly venom. Their poison killed its victims within hours. But Orga the Golden, king of the dragons, did a deed that had all who saw it in disbelief, for the royal bloodline of the dragons had healing power that was not to be found in any plant on earth. The power to draw out Seldrian venom. Orga suffered one of his golden scales to be removed, and a single drop of blood was drawn. They applied it as a poultice to the wound, and the queen was healed. But in so doing Orga's blood entered her veins, and her descendants were forever bound as kin to Orga's, making them one with the dragon's race. From that day, her descendants were known for their ability to see in the darkness almost as well as dragons, and to naturally speak their language. They were also gifted with the same powers, though to a lesser degree. King Aodhnait was grateful, and vowed that his people would forever honor them. After Telemivi, the dragons returned to their homeland, and Tyor made peace with Callagan. Though they had no part in the alliance, and little contact with Tyor or Callagan, the Wildlands was included in the peace treaty. The wolves, known as the Kasia, and a tribal people called the Silj, identified by their olive to dark skin and slanted eyes. To the south of Tyor, Biola, which was inhabited by the centaurs, tigers, and other creatures, was also included, as they were on friendly terms with Callagan. From that day, races of all four kingdoms traveled freely to the others, and were allowed to become citizens, if they wished. The king's counselor, Tumien, was one of the few who opposed uniting the four kingdoms. But it was what King Orga had done that angered him most. He despised the dragons as savage beasts, and in his pride thought it would have been better if the queen had died, rather than been defiled with dragon's blood. When Tumien unlawfully attempted to prevent the peace treaty, he was stripped of his title, and banished from the citadel. Only his lifelong friendship with the king saved him from execution. When King Aodhnait's son Conduil assumed the throne, Tumien secretly created a false history, saying the dragons formed the alliance to win their trust, while using them as a shield against the Seldrian. But when the Seldrian were defeated, the dragons turned on them, killing many of their people and wounding Queen Familia. The Tyrians were eventually victorious, but not before Orga cast a spell on Aodhnait, causing him to believe that they had saved Tyor, and healed his queen, though in healing her they had placed a curse on her descendants, giving them strange powers and abilities, that if used too frequently, would summon the dragons, who would force them to aid them in destroying Tyor and Callagan. This falsehood was at first kept secret, but eventually it was introduced gradually to the tribes. By the time Merlara's father assumed the throne, almost half of Tyor believed it, and openly despised those who knew the truth. The dragon's language was all but forgotten, except by the royal family and the few who still valued it. Even then it was rarely used except, as Nahim had demonstrated, on rare occasions such as Merlara's first day of leading the Tyor. Most of the black dragons and white foxes knew their history, but the pure woods and rising bows did not. Hence Ladiel and Nahim were loyal to Merlara's family, while Terrell and Higlek, though publicly loyal, were in truth hostile, and constantly seeking opportunities to oppose her. Merlara didn't know what her gift, or gifts were. When Tumien's history became known, the royal family was forced to conceal their gifts. By the time Merlara's parents were born, they could no longer access them. Merlara was the last of her people with dragon blood. And she knew she would remain so unless she chose to marry. I wish for a husband, she thought. But even if I did not, I would have no choice. If I do not bear children, all evidence of our friendship with the dragons will be lost. She shook her head, annoyed at her wandering thoughts. This was not the time to be thinking about marriage. All her energy must be spent in keeping the Seldrian from suspecting their plans. If the Seldrian discovered their intentions, their chances of survival were slim. They couldn't defeat the Seldrian without the Keris. The Keris were the only weapons capable of harming the Seldrian. They were crossbows made of steel. The arrowheads were dipped in a melted mineral called tulanil, which would melt Seldrian or dragon scales on impact, piercing the flesh beneath. It could harm humans as well, as warriors soon found it caused severe burns if handled incorrectly. When the alliance was formed, the dragons revealed to Tyor and Callagan where tulanil was to be found. It was not in Tyor, but very common in Callagan, though they were ignorant of it before the alliance. The dragons had known of it for centuries, but they refused to reveal how. Their allies were curious, but didn't press the matter. Only fools thought it possible to force a dragon to do what they wished, and few who attempted it survived. Callagan had continued training their warriors in the skill, but the only tribe in Tyor who used them now were the rising bows. They had used some of the remaining tulanil against the Seldrian who had attacked 2 days before, but they were not skilled enough in the art, and the Seldrian escaped unharmed. The Callagans have more foresight than we. How many times have they warned us of the Seldrian's return? Merlara thought. At least it hasn't affected our friendship. Suddenly Merlara realized she wasn't really thinking of Callagan, but of one of their people. Tyor was Callagan, but it became customary after the alliance for Callagans and Tyrians to teach each other their skill. He had been stationed in Tyor and become captain of the guard 3 years ago. He was 2 years older than Merlara. She had formed a friendship with him, which was only strengthened after her mother's death. Tyor was tall and had light brown skin. His long hair was raven black, his eyes dark brown, and his body was tall and lean. He was a skilled warrior, but kind and soft-spoken. He and Merlara had often trained together, each learning the other's skill. Tyor was 24, 2 years older than Merlara. Thinking of Tyor reminded her she should go to the training field. She was a warrior as well as a queen, and would need instruction with the Keri as well. She stood and left the room. The training field was located about a league from the citadel. Some places were roped off for sword fighting, while others had a row of targets for archery, spear, and knife throwing. Dummies were strategically placed so warriors could practice defending themselves when surrounded. Groups of warriors were spread out across the field, testing each other's skill with swords, spears, axes, and maces. Merlara rode into the clearing with Tiriel and her guards. Higlek and several warriors from other tribes stood around, watching Tyor as he instructed them on how to hold a Keri, load it, and fire it. When Merlara arrived, Tyor stopped and called the warriors to attention. "Carry on," Merlara said. Tyor continued. "The Keri is a dangerous weapon. If not fired quickly enough, the Tulaniel will cause the arrow to overheat the Keri, causing severe burns. In such a scenario, gloves offer little protection." He paused and looked pointedly at several warriors. "As many of you know well." Tyor smiled, and some of the warriors turned red. Merlara noticed some of the rising bows had bandages around their hands or wrists, signifying that Higlek's tribe was incompetent, despite the pride they displayed in the art. Higlek said nothing, but was clearly angry. Merlara felt a strong sense of foreboding, but let the moment pass. This was not the time to address Tyor's remark, though she knew something would come of it later. As Tyor began forming the warriors into a line, Merlara noticed Higlek pull one of them aside and whisper something. For a moment she considered interrupting them, but decided to say nothing. Tyor had told her it would be wise to let Higlek think she was inattentive at times, for it would make him careless and expose his true motives, as the meeting that morning had proven. Tyor noticed them also. "Higlek, it is imperative as chief that you attend." Higlek and the warrior turned, neither of them looking at Tyor, and took their positions. While the warriors fired at the targets, Tyor walked up and down the line, giving instruction wherever it was needed. Merlara stood among them, but he was deliberate not to instruct her. Tyor understood the importance of Merlara maintaining her authority. They had also chosen not to display their friendship in public. It was rumored that she displayed favoritism in her regard for him. Though their friendship was commonly known, Merlara saw no good in flaunting it in people's faces. As the warriors dispersed, Merlara approached him. "Captain, I must speak with you." She turned to Tyor and her guards, who had just mounted their horses. "Stay for a moment." She led Tyor out of earshot, then turned to him. "Your insult was dangerous. You know Higlek and how he despises you. And as you are my friend, you put Tyor and I at risk also." Tyor smiled. "Your Majesty, you forget that while I am lowly in rank as captain of the guard, my presence still commands respect, with the Emperor being my uncle. Any move against me would be an act of hostility toward my family, and as you are highly esteemed among them, it would be too great a risk to retaliate against you as well." "Still," Merlara said sternly, "I will not tolerate any conflict between you and Higlek. It is imperative as captain that you show respect." Tyor was silent, then bowed his head. "Forgive me. It won't be repeated." Merlara sighed. "Tyor insists we know who is loyal, but I sense there are traitors in our midst. She warned me you would speak so." Tyor said gravely. "Take heart. Many enemies surround you, but my people stand with you, and many of yours are devoted to you as well. They will have to be very cunning to find a solution to such opposition." Merlara smiled. "Only Tyor can rival you in encouragement. Tell me, what do you really think of our position? I think you will outwit them so they will not dare to oppose you, as your parents have done." Merlara's smile faltered. Tyor mentioning her parents unsettled her. She knew any mistake she made would be seized by her enemies, and compared to her parents' rule, as they had been well known for their wisdom. "Still, if you notice anything, report to me. I hear and obey." Tyor bowed, and Merlara rejoined her companions. Tyor is right, she thought. There is much to fear, but we are not completely helpless. When our ambassadors reach Callagan, we will have all we need to defeat the Seldrian.